All right, in today's lesson, we are going to be talking about inequalities and one-step addition property of equalities and one-step subtraction property of equalities. So the first thing that we need to talk about is what an inequality is. So an inequality is a mathematical sentence that compares quantities. So we have four different symbols that we will use to compare quantities, and these are less than, greater than, less than or equal to, and greater than or equal to. You can look in your book on page 498. There is a chart that will describe words used for those symbols. So for example, in our less than symbol, this one, we could describe it as is less than or is fewer than. We also have our greater than symbol, and these can be used to describe greater than is greater than, is more than, or exceeds. We also have our less than or equal to. Words to describe this one is less than or equal to, is more than, is at most. And our last one is our greater than or equal to, and we can use words to describe this one as is greater than or equal to, is no less than, is at least. I'll do a quick review of graphing our inequalities. So when we have a number line, we remember that our positive integers are always on the right side of 0, and our negative integers are always on the left side of 0. If I was to graph something like x is greater than or equal to 2, I would say that x could be 2, or it could be a number greater than 2. So since it could equal 2, we're going to put a closed dot, and then we're going to draw an arrow where the numbers are greater than 2. So in this direction. If I have an example of x is less than -1, again, we have our positive integers on the right side and our negative integers on the left side. And I would put an open circle at -1 because x can't equal -1, but it can be any number that is less than -1. So that is a quick review on graphing inequalities and the symbols of inequalities. In today's lesson, we are going to solve for our equality of x. So x plus 3 is greater than 10. Again, these are going to be one step. We have previously talked about drawing our line, and what you do to one side, you always have to do to the other. This is our property of equality, and we're going to use the same for our property of inequality. So you can see here that we have a positive 3. In order to get x by itself, we need to make a 0 pair. To make a 0 pair with a positive 3, we will subtract or put 3 negatives on both sides. 3 positives and 3 negatives make a 0 pair. On this side, I'm left with x, and on this side, I'm left with 10 minus 3, which is 7. My symbol is going to stay the same, so I have x is greater than 7. If I was going to graph this inequality, I would draw my number line. Again, 0, positive integers to the right. I didn't make my number line quite big enough. Start over. 0 down here. It's important that when we draw our number line that we extend it with arrows, meaning that it can go on forever because we can count in both directions till infinity. So now that I have my number line drawn, I have an open circle at 7 because x cannot equal 7, but it is any number that is greater than 7. 8 is greater than 7, so we will draw it going towards our 8. We can also do this when we have a problem like -6 is greater than or equal to n minus 5. Again, we're going to draw our line down the middle. We have 5 negatives, so to make a zero pair, I want to add 5 positives to both sides. The reason why I made a zero pair with -5 is because that is the number that is on the same side as n. So I have 5 negatives, 5 positives, they make a zero pair. I'm left with n on this side. I have 6 negatives and 5 positives. I have more negatives and I have one more negative. So I have -1 is greater than or equal to n. Now I don't like to draw number lines when my number is on the left side. It's hard for me to interpret. So I'm going to switch around my number and n. And when I switch my number and n on opposite sides of the equation, I also have to switch my inequality. So it goes from being a greater than and equal to a less than or equal to. An easy way to remember this is if the alligator is eating -1 on this side, it has to eat -1 on this side as well. Now if I go to graph this, I draw my number line, 0, positives on the right side, negatives on the left side. Since n could be equal to -1, I'm going to put a closed circle. And then I'm going to put it towards where the numbers are less than -1. -3 is less than -1, so I'm going to point my arrow towards -3. This is solving one-step inequalities with addition and subtraction.